Profoto, and today we're about versus freeze mode. Some things to keep. We're talking about this because we've been getting a lot of questions about using and modes, and we're going to kind of break what they do. Audio cutting a little bit?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Let me kind of make sure I'm over here more towards my boom, since I'm kind of off-centered from it a little bit. There we go. So what we're going to be talking about are some of the pitfalls of using either high-speed sync or freeze mode, some things that you need to think about whenever you're trying to stop action. And I'm going to actually show you scientifically, I'm going to draw with you the waveform so you can actually see what it's talking about. I know I do this a lot and it's really, really hard to see. So we're going to actually draw that up and talk about the differences between the two, why freeze mode generally tends to shift a little cooler, and once again, just some of the pitfalls, things you want to make sure you're paying attention to when we are using one of these two modes with our flash. So essentially what freeze mode is we're taking the flash pulse and we're truncating it. So the upside for that is the actual flash duration, or the amount of time that the flash is on, is much smaller, which means the window of time to actually capture the image is really, really quick. Therefore, we're able to stop action, essentially. So, you know, you could go, I always give people the example, you could go into a pitch black room with no light, no light pollution or anything inside of it, and you could set your camera to a 30-second exposure. But when you're using a flash, especially a flash with a really fast flash duration, say somebody throws a baseball really, really hard, right? The moment that flash goes off, your flash has now become the shutter for your camera. So your camera's not gathering any other light except for the light that's being given off by the flash. And because that flash is on for such a very, very short period of time, say once again it was a baseball throw, then the chances that you would see ghosting or a trail from the baseball starts to minimize greatly the faster your flash duration is. So essentially, once again, flash duration is just the amount of time that your flash is on. If you're trying to stop action, the goal is to have the flash on for as little time as possible. Cool? High-speed sync, on the other hand, is trying to overcome an issue of, so essentially when your flash goes off, it goes off with your first curtain. So what happens is you have two curtains. You have your first curtain and your second curtain. You hear about this inside your camera all the time. So what happens is when you fire the shutter, the first curtain starts to open, right? When the first curtain completely opens, the flash fires and the second curtain closes. When you start to see that black line creeping into your shot, what is happening is as the first curtain is opening, before it completely opens to fire the flash, the second curtain starts to close. That's the black line you're getting because the curtain is starting to cover over the image again. So what high-speed sync does, instead of waiting for your first curtain to open all the way, the moment that your first curtain actually opens, the flash essentially turns on like a constant lamp. It's a really long flash duration. But in that long flash duration, you're getting pulses of light. And what that does is as the focal plane starts to move across, or the shutter starts to move across the sensor itself, you're lining it up evenly. So that's essentially what high-speed sync is doing. So you can get up to, depending on your camera, high-speed sync is based off of the fastest shutter speed that your camera can do. So like say you have a Canon 6D, the fastest shutter speed you can get on a Canon 6D is going to be I think it's 1/4000th of a second. Whereas if you move to something like the 5D, or it might even be the 7D may also do it, you can have up to 1/8000th of a second. So you've been able to get even faster on that. The place that freeze mode is going to have the benefit over your high-speed syncs is the fact that freeze mode can go even faster than that. With some of the TO5 numbers on, like the D2 500, for example, being 163 thousandth of a second, which is pretty bonkers. The Pro 10, for example, is 180 thousandth of a second. So the number's much, much higher. And granted, you know, we can talk about TO1 and TO5 numbers too, just if anybody has questions about that kind of stuff, we can answer those things. But essentially, you can get much faster flash or shutter speeds with using your flash as a shutter as opposed to your camera as a shutter with your freeze modes. There are going to be some caveats to that. So your freeze modes are going to work better at your lower power settings, which means if you're outside and you're trying to stop action, it's going to be a little bit harder to walk that fine line between keeping your flash power towards your lower outputs versus being able to control all of your ambient light. It's that fine line that you walk, and it's one of those things that you're going to have to play with. That being said, you can use high-speed sync to stop some action. That's not what high-speed sync was made for. High-speed sync was built as an ambient controller. It was just meant to give you the ability to open up your iris or your shoot wider f-stops, like 1.2, 1.4, 2.8 outside, and still be able to use a flash and to be able to move your shutter speed up faster to compensate for the fact that your aperture is allowing more light into the camera. So essentially what you lose by going to high-speed sync is you're not going to have any ability to shoot at high burst rates. So this is where your freeze mode is going to have an advantage over that. So if you have like maybe you're trying to photograph a dancer who's doing a complex move and you need to have a burst where you capture a few frames to get the correct frame, high-speed sync's not going to allow for that because of the way that the power is managed. You're not going to be able to shoot 20, 30 frames a second. There's not really any cameras that do that with the mechanical shutter anyway, but still your 10 to 15 frames a second like the 1DX can do, you're gonna find it really, really, really hard to do something like that. So that's where freeze is gonna have the advantage over high-speed sync. So if you guys have any questions about anything before I actually get into the drawings to show you what this actually looks like. Hey, what's up everybody? Cool, gotcha. So, cool everybody. Cool. It would sound better with my lav mic for some reason, and it's not about it being plugged in. We're getting some signal interference in here, so we switched over to the boom. It's just our backup plan if something goes wrong, and something's going wrong right now. So we decided to go and just switch over to the boom. So at least you can hear me. It's not the best in the world, but we'll get it done. What's up everybody? Let's see, what camera? Sony 7R3 HSS settings not working at high-speed sync. So I'm not 100% sure what you're asking me, DJ Royal. I hope I'm saying that correctly. So, but let me know, and we can dive deeper into it. So we're gonna switch over here to my trusty iPad and my drawing skills, so I can show you what it is that you're gaining and losing by using these techniques. So first and foremost, the thing that we're going to talk about is a normal flash duration. So, and we're going to start off talking about freeze mode. So let's go and say freeze. Totally left off a part of the Z. So freeze mode. So what happens is when you have a normal flash, the flash ignites and then it tails off like that. So that's going to be a normal flash pulse from a strobe, right? So when you go into your freeze modes, what's happening is we're truncating all of this. This is all gone. Vamoose, right? So what you're getting, and granted I'm chopping this off, I'm not chopping this off 100% accurately at where we chop it, but that's what's happening. You're losing all of that information towards the tail. Now, one of the things that people ask about is why in freeze mode do my lights look a little cooler? They shift a little blue. And that's because all this section right here, all that, yes, you're chopping off flash power, but you're also chopping off color spectrum. And the tail end of a flash like that, your warmer tones are gonna be at the end of that flash pulse. So when we truncate that, you're losing that. It's one of those things where you have to give up some color accuracy in order to get speed. A lot of times you can fix all that stuff in post. It's one of the reasons that we tell people to make sure that you are, or you can fix it in post, or you can, what am I trying to say? You can white balance for it ahead of time with a custom white balance.
Got a couple questions.
Yeah, I'm gonna get to them.
Okay,
But that's why you generally tend to see that shift blue. So that's why you want to ensure if you're using freeze mode on one flash and you're using multiple flashes, make sure they are all in freeze mode or they are all in normal mode. It's very, very important to make sure that you're maintaining color accuracy between the flashes, because if one flash is shooting way cooler than the other one, fixing that in post, not as much fun. So whereas if you're just all in freeze mode, you can white balance that out, or you can go and change that later on inside Photoshop. So let's see what's going on. Let's see. What's up, Portugal? So does this work with the Z7? So freeze mode and high-speed sync work fine with the Z7. Freeze mode isn't inherently tied to a camera brand. So it's not like something that you're going to change in the camera or you're going to change on the air remote. Freeze mode is a setting that's actually inside the flash. So on the D2s and the B10s, you would simply just go in, change the mode from normal mode to freeze mode, and it would know that you're wanting a faster flash duration. So you could use it with an old film camera, and it would do the exact same thing. So someone asked, someone's having an issue with HSS and a Sony 7R3 TTLS remote. So the first thing to know with the Sony system is that firmware is the most important thing that you can do. So that means your camera, that means that you have your remote and your flash all updated. If one of those are off, the way that the Sony system works, especially since we partner with Sony to work on the codes and everything, if one thing's not handshaking with the next, then you can actually have issues where, I know that I remember having something where I didn't have the B1 updated, but I had the camera, the Sony, I had an A7R2 and the remote updated, and my high-speed sync was crazy erratic. So I just updated the B1 and that fixed it. So like I said, firmware is really, really important. And then you just want to make sure that that you are set to, you're not in silent mode, that you're using your mechanical shutter, and that you have wireless turned on in your sync, in your flash settings, and that should make it work. The one thing that I think throws people for a bit of a loop on the Sony stuff is that the window of the air remote never displays high S until the moment that you click the shutter. So you might have your shutter speed ramped up to a higher setting for high-speed sync, and it's not going to reflect in the sync window on your remote until you click the button. So it's something that kind of throws people for a little bit of a loop. It's the way that the Sony system operates. It's the way that they like to tell the trigger to go. It has some advantages. It has some disadvantages. It depends on if that's how you like to work. Disadvantages, one, you don't always know if you're in high-speed sync by looking at the remote. The advantage is if you're shooting with another photographer, say you're doing an event and you have another photographer there for extra coverage, one of you can be shooting in high-speed sync and one of you can be shooting in normal mode, whereas other camera companies don't flip in and out of high-speed sync mode like that. So, if you're like me, like a Fuji shooter, and I was shooting an event with another Fuji shooter or a Canon shooter, like we both either have to be in high-speed sync or we both have to be in normal mode. Whereas, like I said, for the Sony, you have that. So check your firmware, check those settings, and if not, shoot us a message and we'll see if we can work it out. Let's see. Is there a freeze mode on the A1 series? No, Carl, the A1 is actually kind of optimized to always give you the fastest flash duration. So there's not really a freeze mode there. It's just really fast. It's just something about on-camera flashes that I guess don't really need that. They're just relatively quick anyway. I don't know what the duration speeds are on it off the top of my head, so I apologize. But it doesn't really need one because it's pretty fast inherently. So hey, thanks for the work, you. With my can I use my Leicas with Profoto? If so, what trigger do I need? Have a Q2. So yeah, you can use your Leicas. I would just go with the standard air remote, like our original from back in like 08. It's just a bunch of buttons. There's no screens on it, but it's more than enough to do the job. It'll give you the remote control ability that you would want. Say if you have your lights way over there and you don't want to walk over and change the power. That would work fine. So yeah, your Leica will work with 100%. You're not going to have high-speed sync or TTL, but if that's not important to you, then sweet. Yeah, shoot Profoto and just get the regular air mode. You'll be good to go. Hey everybody. So cool. So that's what's happening with your freeze mode. So I will say this. Let me erase some of these doodles I did. So in looking at this, so your TO1 and TO5 numbers, just chop. It's measuring from a different point. So like TO5 is measuring from like 50% of the fall off, and like TO1's like 10%. So a lot of people say you want to pay attention to your TO1 numbers. The faster you can get the TO1 numbers, the more accurate. So if stopping action is mission critical, try to pay attention to the TO1. TO5, everybody measures TO1, TO5. The upside of TO5, it just looks sexier. But the TO1 stuff is super duper fast. So let's go up in here and let's turn this layer off, and we will go here and talk about high speed sync. So HSS. So what high speed sync is doing, once again, it's kicking on the flash and it's staying on, but while it's staying on, it's pulsing, it's making Bart Simpson hair, and then it trails out. So you have a much longer flash duration up here than you would with a flash and freeze mode. Once again, you can stop some action with high speed sync, but what you're giving up is going to be the ability to shoot in bursts. So it's going to be one of those things where you may have to just time it right on the money for the thing that you're trying to stop. If you turn the power down, you'll be able to burst a little bit more, but it's kind of not really what you're using high speed sync for. And because high speed sync's flash pulse is a little less efficient than a traditional pulse, you're probably going to be shooting a little bit higher power outputs anyway. But it's doable. You can do it. That's what you give up with doing it at high speed sync, is going to be that burst mode. In freeze mode, like I said, what you're going to give up is a little bit more of that color accuracy. You're going to be dropping some of those warm tones, and also you're going to be kind of working. If you're working outside, you're going to be kind of walking a tightrope between keeping the flash power low, lighting your subject properly without the ambient like overflowing into your shot. You want to stay at your maximum sync speed or below. So like on my Fuji X-T3, 250th of a second is the highest I would go if I'm using freeze mode. Obviously if I'm using high speed sync, I can go up to 1/8,000th of a second. But that's what you'd want to do with that. The other big thing to know in freeze mode, if you're using TTL, don't. So because of the pre-flash that TTL has to make in order for it to do its measurement to set the power, it's also going to slow down your burst rate. So when you hold down the trigger, it's going to go pop, 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 but it's going to do it at a much lower, right there. It's going to do it at a much, much, much slower process because it's having to fire off a pre-flash, pop, and then it fires a flash. Pre-flash, then a flash. Pre-flash, then a flash. Pre-flash, then a flash. So it's just really, really not the best thing to do. So in freeze mode or high speed sync mode, you want to stay away from TTL. It's okay to use TTL to get your baseline exposure, but you don't want to be using that for something like stopping action because it's just going to slow down the process. Let's see, sport shooting / action on location, what's your recommendation? A1, B10, or something else? I would probably go, so if you have access to power, if you have access to mains power, or you have a sufficient size generator to do it, the D2 is going to crush. It's just a crusher. It does that really, really well. I mean, it's not quite as fast as a Pro 10, but if stopping action is mission critical and you need power, rent a Pro 10. That's going to be the winner by far. But D2 would be good. I would stay, your A1's probably not going to do what you need it to do. So I would go B10 plus, and then you could pair everything with the OCF Magnum reflector. So this right here, OCF Magnum reflector. The reason you pair it with this is because it's going to give you 2 stops more light. Upside for that is because you're getting 2 stops more light, you can actually bring your flash power down if you have the ability to, which one is going to make your flash duration faster. It's going to make you recycle quicker, so if you need to shoot in bursts, you can do that. So this is a really, really good tool. I mean, really, a lot of these hard reflectors, things like the telezoom. I know I'm pointing at a lot of stuff, and I'm probably on a tight shot. But like the telezoom, you can see it here on the wall. Your narrow beam, the traditional magnum reflector, they're all going to be really efficient. So you could use hard reflectors like that can take the light, gather it up, and give you more output. And that's a really, really good move. So once again, I would pair a D2 or a B10 with an OCF Magnum reflector, or if you're using a Pro Pack, I would pair it with the traditional Magnum or like a telezoom, and that way you're getting even more juice out of it. And once again, you can bring the flash power down, bring the flash duration up by doing that, and you'll be good to go. So it's pretty straightforward stuff. Hey, what's up, John from Chicago? Hey. Okay, what about leaf shutter? Just shooting on a normal flash mode, 1/2000th of a second with Hasselblad. It's not necessary to use freeze mode. No, it depends. So some of this stuff is predicated on how fast the action is actually going. I don't have a number off the top of my head that goes like this is the speed that something has to be moving for you to use this shutter speed. You're going to kind of play with it a little bit, and maybe somebody does know that information. If you do know it, please drop it in the comments and share it with everybody. But 2,000 of a second may be fast enough to stop a little bit of movement, and you may not have to either go into freeze mode and your leaf shutter, so you wouldn't go high speed sync anyway. So, but if it gets to the point where something's moving quick, even at 2,000 of a second, which you could stay in, which is kind of dope because of your leaf shutter, you could stay at 2,000 of a second and still let freeze mode and your faster flash durations take you to that next level. So whereas your leaf shutter is going to stop at 2,000, the D2 won't stop till 163,000. So you have all of that space in between where you can really kind of fine tune how much action you need to actually stop. So, but I know it's super techy, but once again, I wanted this information to be out here for a lot of people who've been asking. So just to kind of go through again the pros and cons of each. So let's talk about the pros of freeze mode. The pros of freeze mode are much faster flash durations than your shutter can do. So that's a big deal in stopping action. Downside to freeze mode, one of them is going to be you are going to see a color shift to the cooler spectrums. Why is that? Because we're truncating the end of the flash. If we go back here to my little handy dandy display, because we are truncating the very end of that flash. You got that up? Oh.
Yeah, I'm gonna swap it, sorry.
All good. So make sure you guys can see it on a large screen while I'm talking. So.
Oh, that's you twice.
That's me twice. This is going swimmingly. There we go. That's perfect. So you're losing the color spectrum because we're truncating. Oh. And then now I'm not even activating my layers. There we go. So you're truncating this part of the flash, which are your warmer tones. Warm tone. Pardon my writing. So you're getting rid of your warm tones all back over here. So that's what you're losing. So losing warm tones, and it's going to be a little bit harder to balance that flash with the ambient because you're going to want to work at your lower power ranges depending on the flash. If it's like the B1X, for example, it really shines in freeze mode anywhere like 5 and below on the power spectrum, whereas something like here, I can actually pull up on my computer. So the B10, for example, you're still on a TO5 time at a power level of 7, you're at 1/8000th of a second. So you're at your shutter speeds top end at a power level of 7, which is great. So as you start to move further down at like 6, you're 113,000, 117,000 at 5, 119,000 at 4. So some of the newer flashes like the D2s and your Pro 10s and your B10s were made to have those greater flash durations at higher power outputs. That way, as you turn that power down some more, it's really fast. So that's the upside. So upside is way fast flash durations. Downside, color spectrum, and balancing outside with your ambient. Then you move to high speed sync. the upside is you're going to have a much easier time balancing that with the ambient light because you're going to have more shutter speed control on the top end. The downside is you're going to lose burst rate. So you're not going to be able to hold down your shutter and go pop, 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 pop. There's going to be a very, very noticeable time difference. Excuse you. I was about to say bless you, but then you didn't sneeze. So I was like, I don't know what you say in this predicament. So, but you're going to notice a significant slowdown frame to frame with high-speed sync mode. It's just how the power is managed. Last thing to remember with all of them, do not use TTL mode when you're trying to do either of the two. Whereas your high-speed sync is you're really going to have to time it properly and snap at the point of the shot that you want, once again, because you don't have that burst rate. TTL is going to slow the whole process down by by actually taking a pre-flash before each one of those pulses that you take. So if you're trying to burst something in TTL mode, it's going to go pop, pop, or technically it's going to go pop, 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 and you're not going to get most of the frames that you're actually hoping to get. So that's stuff to remember there. So I'm going to see if you guys have any questions before I sign out for the day, and if not, then we're out of here. Let's see. I do a lot of high school sports. Most places don't have external power. Currently using 2B2s. Yeah, I mean, most places don't. I mean, I always bring up, see if they have mains powers as wishful thinking. But this starts to get into the place where things like the B10s really shine, because a lot of the speed that you get with the D2 is inside of the B10s. It's not quite as fast, and it's definitely not quite as fast on the recycle as your D2 is going to be off of mains power, but it's still going to give you a lot. So like, let's see, the fastest flash duration of the B10, you're talking about 1/50,000th of a second at a power level of 2, which is pretty great. So you can get it pretty quick. And the nice thing is a lot of times you don't need that speed. So you could start bringing that power level back up a little bit and still be well within freezing ranges as far as your the duration goes, without having to worry about motion blur. So let's see. Any other questions? If not, we're out of here. So let's see. What's up, India in the house? Yes, B10 is going to be better for it. B2 is great. I'm a big B2 fan. I always have mine hanging right there. I don't use it much on the lives because it's a discontinued product, but I do use it a lot. But yeah, so the B10 for just straight portability is going to be the king, because it's going to give you obviously, you're going to have the option of going freeze mode or high-speed sync, and then you're battery powered, which is awesome. And then once again, you could pair that with the Magnum reflector and take a 500 watt B10 Plus to effectively 2,000 watts of light output. So you'd be able to do a lot with it, which is great. Or just the smaller B10, you could take that and effectively 1,000 watts. So pairing it with a good, really high efficiency reflector is a great move, like the OCF Magnum. I would go that way. Vitor, B10 and B1 happy user. I love it, man. Thank you so much. Example shots would be awesome. Could be something to consider next time. Absolutely. So this was more, for today, was kind of more of a breakdown of why it does what it does. We're absolutely going to do, especially as the weather starts to turn a little more warm, and we can do some things outside. It's honestly, here in the southeast, it's been raining a lot. Like the whole ground is crazy mushy. So, but the plan is to get outside, and that way we can do a contrast and comparison of trying to use freeze mode and high-speed sync outside, and we can do some more stuff on the inside too. But today was kind of more of like a scientific breakdown, just to kind of show you visually with a drawing why you're getting the things that you're getting. So, but absolutely, we're 100% going to do it practically as well. It's fun to have just the straight up information sometimes. So cool. Hopefully this is awesome. I appreciate everybody for chiming in. Thanks for hanging and chatting. Let's see. Getting busted with snow, I bet. So Veronica, we are going to shoot in freeze mode, high speed sync. We're not prepped for it today. We don't have, I was trying to think of something quick. I was actually thinking about this earlier. I was like, I should shoot something, but I couldn't come up with something fast enough to do. I know that we popped water balloons one. That was actually a pretty good one.
Yeah, it was fun. Yeah.
So we did a water balloon pop. We could just do that again, and that way you can see the difference between the two. Let's see. Question: I shoot a Pentax 645Z. Does Profoto have a HSS trigger for the system? We don't. The only high-speed sync triggers that we currently have are Canon, Nikon, Sony, Fuji, Panasonic, and Olympus. I always tell people, the more demand that's out there, the more likely it is you're going to see something like you would see a Pentax trigger or some other trigger come to fruition. So it's just really about how many people want it. So anytime that anyone has ask questions about something that we don't make, I always send it up to R&D. That way they can go, okay, demand is growing or it isn't growing. So I'll absolutely send that up there for you. Let's see. My boy working out. I'm trying to stay physically fit. Trying to stay healthy. Basketball season comes to Flagstaff. Get me in the gym. Let's do it. I love Arizona. I've got a lot of family out there. They're in Phoenix though, but Flagstaff's gorgeous. James Madison says, "Hey Kate."
Hey hey.
Of course, me too. Thanks, James. So thank you all so much for coming in and hanging out. It was super fun. In the meantime, I hope you have an awesome weekend. We'll work on showing this practically with actual photographs coming up here soon. And that way we can kind of tie them all together and you can see the science behind it right here, like we did today, and talk about some of the pitfalls. And then you can see us actually doing it for the real. So we might just go the water balloon route, but we'll see what happens. So thank you all so much. Have an awesome weekend, and we will see you next time. Peace out.